The latest as far as China's maritime warfare is concerned. Its intent has been clear for the last decade, but in the last couple of days, it has pushed the pedal once again. There are two things that have happened. One, it has collaborated with Russia to come out with the most extensive maritime drills and naval drills between the two countries, and in fact, the biggest for post-Soviet Russia, so to say. Secondly, China is also once again posturing in the Indo-Pacific. It's been having skirmishes with Philippines the last couple of weeks, and there has been a latest instance there as well. So that brings us to ask two fundamental questions. One is, what should be the priorities as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned? Remember, these exercises between China and Russia took place in the Sea of Japan, one of the four countries of Quad. US, Japan, India and Australia are the four Quad countries, and given that there's a Quad meeting that will take place next week on the 21st, should this now be a key focus area for the four leaders? That's a big question that we are asking on India Global. Besides, what should be India's strategy for the Indian Ocean region, where China has been looking to play a larger role? All right, let's open this up. Don McLain Gill, who's joining me from Manila. He's a geopolitical analyst with De La Salle University. Thank you so much, Don, for taking out the time. And we also have Mr. Shashank, former Foreign Secretary. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to me on India Global. In fact, let me start with you, Don. There have been multiple instances as far as Chinese Coast Guard hitting out on Philippines' ship. The latest indicates that Philippines may have even withdrawn from an island that falls within its exclusive economic zone. Are we going back to the same Scarborough Shoal area, Scarborough Shoal, all over again? And how does Philippines read this current situation? What are its options? How does it want to play the Chinese aggression this time around?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Ms. Gaurie. And of course, this is an important question, but we must understand that the Philippines has not withdrawn from the Escoda or Sabina Shoal, but rather the ship, the BRP Teresa Magbanua, which is the largest Philippine Coast Guard ship, merely returned to Manila due to the structural damages that China had caused it and the depleted supplies. But nonetheless, there is an alternative ship that is on its way to Sabina Escoda Shoal to maintain the Philippine presence there in its lawful exclusive
Okay, that's an
economic
important
zone.
clarification, but nevertheless, as things stand right now, how is Manila now playing it? Has it learnt its lessons from Scarborough Shoal? Is it willing to respond to China in the currency that it best understands? Talk to us about that.
Absolutely, Ms. Gaurie. And you have to understand that the Scarborough Shoal, the illegal occupation of China of Scarborough Shoal in 2012, was due to its ability to exploit the gaps in the Philippine response within its exclusive economic zone. But what happened here in the Sabina Escoda Shoal particularly was that the Philippine Coast Guard, as early as April, was able to recognize that China had plans to discreetly pursue land reclamation activities and research in that area. So it immediately sent its largest ship. The BRP Teresa Magbanua has been there since April, and China has been very frustrated about this because it wanted to occupy the area discreetly. But, we've shown light on its illegal tendencies.
Okay. Mr. Shashank, sir, let me ask you this. One is, of course, the Philippine aspect of it that Don is talking about in detail. The second is that these comes just days ahead of a Quad meeting that is scheduled to take place in New York, where the four leaders will meet. Will China's aggression in the Indo-Pacific dominate the Quad meeting now?
There is no doubt about it that China would be one of the important subjects of discussion, because Quad is a cooperation mechanism which we have tried to develop for the Indo-Pacific, and especially to counter Chinese muscle flexing. And Philippines is the most important case, where even though there was an International Court of Justice decision, but that was not accepted by China, and Philippines somehow, because of their own position that they were not getting that kind of support from the Americans and others, which they were expecting. So they decided to succumb to the Chinese pressures. I think what we have to do is to see how Quad can help strengthen the resolve of the neighbors of China, especially wherever they claim this 9-dash line, that they are able to take care of their territorial interests. India has been helping Philippines in some ways
Yes.
some of their BrahMos missiles, etc., and some other things which Philippines needs. They are being given to them. But I'm sure that there will be further discussion on this issue
Yes.
during the Quad meeting.
Ambassador Shashank, then let me ask you another question, which is around the fact that what about specific options for New Delhi? Because this is, of course, muscle flexing, some would say, is happening in areas that is not completely in New Delhi's backyard. But nevertheless, India is a very important stakeholder in the Indo-Pacific, and these do indicate clear muscle flexing and aggressive posturing by China.
Well, what we are finding is that this European struggle which is going on between Russia and Ukraine, and where Ukraine has been asking for longer range missiles to hit Russia in its interior portions, has been making Russia more and more dependent on China. And China feels that, well, it can count on Russian support and also do much more muscle flexing in the Asian region. I think India has to ensure that it has to continue with its supply lines of defense equipment, etc., from Russia. At the same time, it has to directly tell China that it will not accept any kind of muscle flexing from the Chinese side as far as India is concerned, and it will work together with the other Asian countries, and as well as the Quad countries, to see that if any kind of solution can be found, that China can behave more peacefully and accept the code of conduct which was accepted between the ASEAN countries and China.
Yes. Don, I think a lot of people say one of the biggest failures of America in the Indo-Pacific has been in its inability to deal with how China browbeat Philippines, and how it has been doing so, it continues to do so. Do you see that there could be greater dialogue, cooperation between America and Philippines in the wake of China's aggressive posturing in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, absolutely. You know, the failures of U.S. deterrence, particularly in the Western Pacific in the early 2000s, leading up to 2012, was not only a setback for the Philippines, but also a setback of the U.S. security position in the region, which China has been able to exploit. But now I think the stakes have become too high for Washington to ignore what is taking place in the Western Pacific, in the West Philippine Sea. So interestingly, after the June 17th incident where Chinese Coast Guard forces cut off a finger of our Filipino sailor, the U.S. showed that it was more committed to escort Philippine ships, but it was in fact Manila that turned down the proposition temporarily. So I think that the U.S. is realizing that stakes have become too high to ignore.
Right. Stakes have become too high. What happened under Barack Obama's tenure should most certainly not happen anytime now. Ambassador Shashank, very quickly, so I'm running out of time, which is that this aggressive posturing comes at a time when there's some thaw between India and China on the border talks for the last 4 years. Explain to us, connect these two dots for us, sir.
Well, some defense experts have been saying that America is feeling somewhat ashamed that it has not come to the rescue of Philippines and Taiwan the way these countries were expecting the American support. So therefore, America has been trying to put China and India against each other in the beginning, so that Chinese attention is more towards the land borders and land conflict with India rather than towards the ocean side. India, on the other hand, feels that, well, look, there are other issues which are going on. China wants to become a superpower on the global scale. And therefore, India feels that, well, the land border disputes where China can be persuaded to withdraw from the areas, and our foreign minister has said that 75% evacuation has taken place. So India has to look after its own interests.
Right, absolutely. India needs to take care of its own interests. We need to stand up to this aggression, and we've been doing so for the last 4 years relentlessly. Most importantly, China's maritime aggression needs to now be dealt with very, very severely and clearly. As I said, what happened during Barack Obama's tenure should be a lesson and a wake-up call and shouldn't happen again ever. All right, on that note, Don McLain Gill and Ambassador Shashank, thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to me on India Global.